So this problem is tricky because a couple things. Number one, you have to recognize that needs to be changed. You need to change that into 1 minus cosine squared x. The reason is because there's already a cosine there, and you can't turn cosine into sine, but you can turn sine squared into cosine. And I want them all to be in terms of the same function so that I can solve the equation, and you'll see what I mean by that in a second. So notice that I substituted that in. So what wasn't changed were these things. Now I'm going to distribute that in, and I'm going to get 2 minus 2 cosine squared x plus 3 cosine x minus 3 equals 0. Now, a lot of people even if they do that right, they make a mistake because they think, oh, I'm just going to move everything to the other side of the equation. Well, you can't do that. This is like with this. If I had this, for example, I'm just making something up. Would you want to move the 1 over?
No, you don't factor.
No, you want to try to turn these terms into factors if possible.
Gotcha. So
which won't happen in that case down there, but it will, I'm sure, happen in the case of my problem up here. So first of all, let's add like terms. So what is 2 minus 3?
-1.
So there's -1. And don't forget you have a negative in front of that too. Now, some people don't mind that. I personally don't like to see the negative in front, so I just multiply through by a negative to switch all the signs. Because then 0 times -1 is still 0, so you could do that as legal. It's kind of like moving everything to the right side of the equation. Got it?
Yeah.
So now let's factor this, and let's use u substitution again, just to make it easier. Let's let u equal the cosine of x, just to help you see it better. So I have 2u squared minus 3u plus 1 equals 0. Does that make it a little bit easier? 2u and u, -1 and -1. How did I know they both had to be negative?
Because it's a positive.
Because this was a positive, but this was a negative.
Yeah.
So that meant it had to be negative and negative.
Yeah.
This goes back to factoring. If you don't remember how to factor, watch some of those videos about factoring. So now you can see, does that work? Check in my head. Yep, that worked. That's -3u, which is right there. Remember, this is the outside plus the inside.
Yeah.
This is your first, this is your last.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Now why did I do that? Well, because now I can just say either 2u minus 1 equals 0. Remember the 0 product property? Or u minus 1 equals 0, which means u equals 1/2, or u equals 1. And what was u again?
Cos.
So now substitute the cosine back in. So the cosine of x is equal to 1/2, or the cosine of x is equal to 1. And look at your unit circle. Where does the cosine equal 1/2? Cosine is your x coordinate. Where does it equal 1/2? It equals 1/2
pi/3.
at there and at 5 pi over 3. So pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. So x equals pi over 3, 5 pi over 3, and where does the cosine equal 1? Remember, that's your x coordinate?
Or 0.
At 0 or at
And
2 pi, but 2 pi was not included, so it's 0.
Okay.
And there are your 3 answers, and always check them just to make sure. And again, I suggest using the store button in your calculator and plugging those back in here, and you'll see that those are the right answer.